How's it going, everyone? This is Herdrax, Dene's ugly cousin, so to speak. And today we're going to have a beautiful workshop by the one and only brother S3ctor. He is a developer on Starwind. He has his own fork. And before we begin, quick aside, just want to thank you, S3ctor, for donating your time because you won't mind that I mentioned this, but this is your birthday weekend. You had your birthday yesterday, so congratulations, my friend. I wish you all the best and thank you so much for doing this for us.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. It's a pleasure to be here. It was quite a year. A really crazy experience. With you were with me going through a lot of the things that I went through forking open MW. You watched me working on the construction set.
Oh, yes.
I got very well acquainted with the community in the last year. It's been a lot of fun, so I'm absolutely happy to give my time back to everybody for sure.
This is actually a beautiful segue because Dene had the foresight, as usual, of including S3ctor in this first batch of workshops for this first iteration of the Mastery Month called while we're designing and thinking about the event and everything. One of the things we were talking about with S3ctor, and for the people watching this live, this will probably come off as already conventional wisdom and just a little bit of repetitive information, but because we're recording, um, and this is going to stay for posterity. There's a small introduction. Just going to give it to S3ctor. When I joined, and it was fairly recently, a couple of months ago, the community, Johnny Hostile and S3ctor were my first teachers, and I won the lottery there because they're both programmers. S3ctor has a heavy programming background. He's a computer science major. And one of the things that we hope with a workshop like this is to sort of dispel the fog of superstition around a couple of topics, especially working some things manually, which is essentially what the S3 command is all about. But also, and S3ctor agreed to talk a little bit about this. It's not going to be a workshop also about this, but if you learn the value of understanding what a plugin is in its most basic format, if you convert it to JSON, for example, or TOML, and you actually learn how to read that kind of file, this becomes an invaluable tool and just yet another tool. The goal with this workshop is not to offer a silver bullet workflow method. It's just yet another tool that you can put under your belt, yet another way of achieving things. Because if you know how to read a plugin, for example, every program that we use, Magic, Editor, tes3cmd, everything, they are all reading and editing information from that plugin file. And that's where I started under S3ctor and Johnny, and it has helped me a lot. But anyway, without further ado, I hope everybody have a great time. Passing on to you, my brother.
Thank you, Herdrax. That's actually that leads into kind of what we need to get started on very nicely, I think, because accessing a plugin at a low level is kind of the essence of why we use tes3 command, right? The purpose of it is that it is a command line tool for modifying plugins. We can use it to clean plugins, and I'll elaborate a little bit on what exactly it means to do that. tes3 command will actually tell you all of the different things that it does. But it's a sort of a Swiss Army knife for just looking at a plugin, which could be a mod. It could also be just Blood Moon or Morrowind.esm, which we will do some cursed things to today. And you can modify individual components of it. You can look at individual objects, like maybe you just want to dump KS out onto your terminal and see what his stats and his inventory are. Maybe you want to make another mod that just gives KS a shirt. And we could do something like that in tes3 command. So there are a lot of different things that you can do with it. It's a really flexible tool, and one of the reasons that it is handy is that it's available on any platform, and people on either engine can use it. It works on ESPs, it works on ESMs, it works on OMW add-ons. It actually sort of barely works on save files from both engines as well. I've used it a couple of times to, like, somebody would send me their save file in OpenMW, and tes3 command can actually read just enough of that to know what mod somebody was using inside of their save, which maybe we'll explore today. So,
Right.
there's good reasons to use this thing and there's bad reasons to use this thing. Number one, it's a command line tool, obviously, and I'll try to help you guys get over some of the difficulties and uncomfortable parts of dealing with that. But if you can do what you're thinking of easily in either construction set or something else, then maybe this isn't the right tool. If you want to, specifically, if you want to add something to an object, if you want to put an item in somebody's inventory, things like that, tes3command can't do that specifically. What it is good at, though, when you would want to use it, is if maybe opening the construction set is just going to be a pain for the specific mod. Maybe you want to learn a little bit about what a mod is doing, but also it has, like, it depends on Morrowind and Tamriel data and DR data and OAAB and like 5 or 6 other things, and it would just be a huge pain to open it. And you just really wish, like, I want to look at this one thing about it. Another case where tes3command is also very useful, something that you guys might see in troubleshooting every now and then, is if somebody has a mystery mod in their setup, they encounter some weird dialogue or something is wrong with a weapon. Maybe it has a really high value or some insane enchantment and they can't figure out why. tes3command is your best friend for doing those kinds of things.
Right.
We're going to start from the very beginning here. I sent Herdrax a document with some backing information. And by the way, Herdrax, I have some template commands in there. I only put a handful in, but if we catch any more that we might want to share with people, please feel free to toss it in that doc while we're doing this.
Okay. Do you want me to share here right now for people already? Better, right? But if you have it, if you can do it, that however you prefer.
Let's go ahead and wait till the end because I think we might want to add on to it.
Okay.
I
Just
only put a handful of very basic things in there.
right. Just really quick, just a quick history lesson for those interested. And I'm going to put a couple of links in here. This is a tool developed by a user called John Moonsugar. And where I first learned from S3ctor, because he and I agreed that we have the one and only goat of our community, the beautiful abbot, the saltiest pirate, the mangiest dog in the most beautiful way. He talks at length also about it in his website called Morrowind is Home. Some people may have not heard about it. But here is the GitHub link for this tool. And yeah, thank you. Oh, S3ctor beat me to it already. All right.
Yeah, I went it in there while you were.
Yeah, Tamriel Rebuilt also have a great article. Oh, Abbott, he is the goat. Talk about the fortitude in that man, right? Doing this for more than 20 years. And the more I watch these workshops and see all these tools, these contemporary tools, I cannot imagine how the guy did it back in the day, the amazing things that he did without anything. Can you imagine that, S3ctor? You were explaining to me from a technical perspective the things that he did and what it meant. Wow. Abbott,
I
if
think
you're
it
here,
makes
sir,
sense.
you are the goat.
I, back in the day, we had older tools, and I imagine really some certain things like this could probably have been done by hand. When I figured out how to put Lua records and OMW add-ons, it was mostly just a matter of like sitting and staring at a hex editor for a little while and decoding the format. And it's a relatively simple format. Anybody could go in and do that.
Well, you're being modest, but that's okay. Moving on.
It's not fair. But
You,
yeah, this is a brand new stock setup. I tried to make this as representative to anybody as possible. So I don't even have tes3command set up on here. I just got a fresh download of it before we got started here. So we'll go
okay.
ahead and stick this in our data files folder. I'm going to show you guys a couple different ways that you could install it, though, because sticking it in your data files folder isn't really the best or most effective way for OpenMW users. Some people might be wondering what the heck they're supposed to do with that. So I'm going to use my MO2 setup as an example for you OpenMW people out there. You can do something very similar to this, just wherever you put your mods. It's going to be set up very similarly to how MO2 works.
Good.
All my individual mods are here. And we can just go and stick the binary at the top. And we'll show a couple examples of like how you can actually interact with this style later. And finally, there's a third way that you can set it up. If you guys are using MO2, which this is really handy to be able to do, I made my MO2 setup, and I actually already had this done. So if you click here and you go under Edit, you can hit this Add button, and you can make an empty, brand new executable. And I'll show you mine as an example. I called it tes3command. You're actually going to start this. It's C Windows syswow64cmd.exe, and then you'll point it to wherever your Morrowind data file folder is. So that already exists. I can just close this crap out, and we'll do our first run of it.
Cool.
So
Just one quick thing, just for the sake of being thorough, you open a prompt command there, right? Which is pretty much you can right click and every Windows user have that as a default, right?
yes, there's a couple different ways that you can open it. I prefer having it set up through MO2, but if you just open it from your file explorer over here, it's very
Hmm.
easy to do. You hold shift on your keyboard, you right click, and it's going to ask you for a PowerShell window instead. But if you give them a second, it's the exact
Okay.
same.
Okay.
So we've got tes3command installed now. We can start doing a couple of test runs with it. One of the first things that we might want to do is to clean a mod. A lot of mods are dirtied for various reasons. Sometimes that's done on purpose, but generally it happens just because the original construction set is kind of buggy. People do things that they don't mean to do. And in that document that Herdrax has, there is a link to this page here on the tes3command GitHub where it actually will explain all of the different types of cleaning that it does. There are very specific parts of a plugin that it will go through and delete. For example, evil GMSTs, which might be a fun thing to explore. Does anybody know if any of the official Bethesda plugins are dirty in any way?
I want to say Blood Moon, right? Yeah, all of them. G7. Hey, brother. Welcome, welcome.
I'd rather not try to clean the ESM files, but I don't actually play on this computer, so we could do that for fun if you wanna try that for science. Because it doesn't matter if this install actually boots or not.
We have G7 in the audience. No pressure.
I noticed someone in the audience when I tabbed out to put the link in earlier.
Right? Yeah. It's like we're playing guitar and there's Eric Clapton sitting there on the stage, on the crowd, but that's okay. We can
I can't
manage it.
close one of these windows at a time. But anyway, let's try adamantium armor just as a random example. So we'll do // or /tes3cmd.exe. The // is important because we have it sitting in data file, so it's going to give you this stupid error. It's a nonsense error because the system, it's not actually installed in your system, and there is a way that you could fix this, but that's kind of, it's a little messy, and I don't want to have people just sticking this in their system directories for what we're doing today. But maybe if you ask G7, he'll tell you where you can put it in your computer so you don't have to do that crap. Oh, that's convenient. Cool. So when we went in and we tried to clean the adamantium armor plugin, we actually did get some duplicate objects and redundant ambient subrecords. So this one in particular, is something that can really affect vanilla users. When a plugin is saved by the construction set, every so often it just puts in light data in there that's useless, and this can cause the black fog bug, I believe is the purpose of this one.
If I may, Sector, again, for the sake of being thorough and for the sake of people that are actually beginners, can you run over a little bit on the most basic level, what is a duplicate record and what we're talking about? We're talking about ambient lighting cells being redundant as well, if you could.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me just dump this cell, right? And we can kind of get an idea of what these things look like. tes3cmd.exe. Which cell did it say that it didn't like? Okay. So when we use tes3command, we're interacting with each of the individual objects in the game, is how I like to think of it. Not everything is one object, like a cell. A cell is the Bethesda name for areas. I don't really know why they call it that. Maybe somebody in the audience knows better. Um, but a cell is your collection of an area and all of the crap that's in it. So we'll get Balmora, Meldor, armor from Morrowind.esm. This is the basic structure of what every tes3 indication looks like. And actually, I missed part of it. So before I explain it to you, let me finish it. There we go. So we say tes3command.exe. We ask it to do a specific thing, which here is going to be to dump or show us on the screen a cell, and we need to give it an exact ID. And there's other different types of filters that we can apply on here as well, but right now we're asking for a very specific one, Balmora, Meldor armor, and then we dump that out of Morrowind.esm. I think that should be all right.
And the ones that you put after the two dashes were just for the sake of being didactic, right? As people get comfortable, they don't need to actually type that.
Show me what you mean in my command here. Do you mean where the two hyphens are
Yep.
placed?
Yep, hyphens, I'm sorry, not dashes.
Oh,
When
no, no, no,
you're
it's fine. I just wanted to be clear about what you're asking. So the two hyphens or dashes are actually necessary so that it understands you're trying to put a filter on it, or you're
right.
trying to ask it to do a specific thing. If I took those off, it has
Okay.
absolutely no idea what I'm asking it for anymore.
One quick thing, Danny asks if you can zoom in a little bit because we're dealing with a lot of commands, and for the sake of recording, if you could.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, thank you. Beautiful. Beautiful.
To get that good font in there. I'm a
Oh
little
yeah.
bit less familiar with the Windows terminal, so I can't do some of the nicer things with this offhand. But what we're looking at here is the basically a text representation of Meldor's place, right?
Mm-hmm.
The record is a cell. It's called Balmora Meldor Armor. Every single one has an ID. It has to have a name, right? It's not a
Right.
particularly common thing, which you can also see here. It's represented in two ways. There's the data subrecord. Every different type of object has a data category. It means different things for different objects, but everyone's got one. Because it's an interior or it's a cell specifically, it has a water height. There's not actually any water in here, so it's just 0.
Right.
And this is the part that we were mentioning earlier with the adamantium art. This is AMBI, it's the ambient light settings for this area, right? This
Right.
only exists in Morrowind.esm. Bethesda put this here, they set the light settings up, it looks a certain way already. Unless you're changing it on purpose, this doesn't need to be in anything that affects Meldor's place. And in
Right.
vanilla specifically, when these get added by tes.cs, in a dirty way, in an unintentional way that need to be cleaned, that's what causes the black fog bug. So you have two different things trying to change the light settings for the cell, which isn't really a great representation of the problem in vanilla.
Right.
7 could probably explain the fog bug specifically a little bit better. I'm not great with the vanilla intricacies, but the rest of these contents that you can see here are all of the different objects within the cell. When you see this little asterisk, this is where it starts and ends. Everything's got a numeric ID, a name, and it goes somewhere. And this is
Mhm.
very common across every different type of object that you can find in here, whether it's Meldor himself, or his furniture, or the guy standing next to him to make sure that you don't steal all of his stuff. They have very similar representations in here, and you can just scroll through this and read it.
Right. Let me just backtrack real quick before you move on, because one of the first things that you taught me was that a dirty record, again, for the sake of the rookies, is not necessarily a bug, and it's not necessarily going to make your mod crash the game. Sometimes it's just junk information, right? Sometimes it's only you moving a piece, do a control Z, you save it, and you leave it there, right? And that's going to leave a dirty reference that you modified that cell when you actually didn't. Isn't that right?
Exactly. And there are
Mm.
many different kinds of free records. For example, one thing that the construction set likes to do is when you save a mod,
Right.
sometimes it will save records like this. It will try to save cells, but those cells will be empty. There won't be any information associated with them. There's just a bunch of these in your plugin. It's not going to hurt anything. It's not going to break anything. It makes your file a little bit bigger. And if you were really particular about getting rid of that, then you can and should clean it. But it's not going to break people's games. It's not really a problem in most cases. But
But
there's different types of cleans. There's different types of dirty records, and some are relevant for some people, and some.
another thing I wanted to throw on the table real quick, because it's another amazing tool that you pointed me to it, and I think it ties into what you're about to explain to us for the rest of the workshop. Acid Zebra is a user that developed this tool that I linked called Mod Mapper for Morrowind. And what it does is that in one fell swoop, you can literally go in and check. And he already created a master file for us where we can see every single mod available on the internet. And he scoured the whole of the web. And we can see cell by cell which mods are used on each cell. So for the sake of being thorough, users and modders that are worried about compatibility and they want to design for compatibility, they can use this tool and they can check it to see a certain cell that you want to build, maybe a settlement is busy or not. The thing about dirty records is this. Um, the way the mod mapper works, it sort of scans all of the ESPs and hunts for that asterisk to see if a certain cell is modified or a certain area. If you leave a dirty reference there, you just move an object, you do a control Z, you change your mind, you go to another cell, you change another cell, but you leave that as a dirty reference. Mod Mapper is going to map this as modified and is going to put your mod as altering a certain cell, whether it's interior or exterior. So after Mod Mapper, leaving dirty mods becomes even more of a borderline a rude thing to do because you are sort of hindering into the people that actually want to be thorough in their research and just really double check if a cell has a certain number of mods being used there or not. So I think after mod mapper is just that more important to make sure you have clean mods.
Absolutely. And Mod Mapper is one of the most incredible tools that I think anybody has ever come up with for Morrowind. Like conceptually, the way it works on a technical level is kind of ridiculous, but the sheer ridiculousness is part of why I love it so much.
Beautiful.
And by the way, we've used this term records very comfortably between the two of us as we've gone into this so far, right? So I want to be
Very
very
true.
specific about what that means, okay? A record is just an object in the game, right? You guys have to be familiar with this concept already on some level, because you know in the game some stuff is an armor, some stuff is a weapon, some stuff is just a building, some things are doors, some things are NPCs, so on and so forth. So I dropped this page in the chat that gives you the short name of all of the different record types. And this is how they're literally represented inside of an ESP. But this is also how we'll look for this kind of stuff inside of tes3 command. So we'll ask for a glob if we're looking at a global, or an NPC, which I'll go ahead and do real quick. So we'll type NPC underscore. Let's give it an exact ID, and we'll ask for Fargo. Really simplistic stuff. We ask it to dump that out, and this is everything about Fargoth. This is pretty much how it would be represented in the construction set too. So the dump function isn't like, this is one of those things that is mostly useful if you just want to do it very quickly. For example, I could look for anything in here that modifies Fargoth, which in this order is probably only going to be Morrowind itself.
So realistically, if you had a huge mod list, it would show you every mod touching Fargoth, right?
If you happen to have like 7 or 8 different things in here that touch Fargoth, then you can see where it tried to here. Plug in Morrowind.esm,
Right.
and it gave me Fargoth, but it didn't actually get any results from anything else. I'm not sure that that actually is a valid wildcard syntax for Windows. I don't think that that actually will get you all of the ESP and ESM files in this current directory. It should, though. We can do something very similar with this, which is one of my favorite features, right? We don't have to just spit this out onto our screen. We can put all of this stuff out into another plugin, which is extremely handy. So you do that using the raw with header argument, and then what we give it after that is the name of our new mod. So we'll say Fargoth, Fargoth.esp, and Fargoth comes from Morrowind.esm. So boop, he spits that out, and if I go boom, there's my Fargoth.esp. There's nothing in there but Fargoth right now, but I could copy him, move him, rename him, anything like that.
Can you remember like a real life situation where you actually use that in your workflow, developing Starwind or something similar?
Yeah, for example, when Death Troopers came out,
Right.
Death Troopers modifies one of the original cells in Starwind, which I didn't want to do because it was my player housing on my server. So I did something kind of like this. I went and I took that cell, type cell, exact ID, and I dumped it out into a plugin from here. And then I used tes3conv to just rename it, and I put a door to it in a different place. And that was all that I actually had to do. I didn't have to copy and paste that inside of another tool or anything like that. Granted, that is also one of those things that is not really the best use case in the world for tes3 command. If you can use the vanilla construction set, it does that very handily. Maybe if you wanted to make a patch to a house mod, or make your own version of it, this would be a fairly handy thing to do. It's especially handy when I'm researching. That's really the main reason that I will do that. It's like, how does Morrowind do this? So we'll chaos. And we ended up outputting it to the same location, vargoth.esp, but it's
Apart from cleaning, which
a
is
little bit
probably
bigger.
the number. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, that's all. I just pulled up the new ESP, and it's slightly larger. You can see that we have that cell in there now, so we have
Right.
our own unique version of that we can work with somewhere else.
I was going to ask that apart from cleaning, which seems to be the number one reason why a beginner would use that tool, what would be, I mean, number two that you think would be extremely useful to use that?
One thing that I really like to do with it is to examine my whole list all at once to find a specific weapon or a specific object, which I'd like to try to do here. Let's see if we can get. I'll show you guys another one of my favorite arguments, actually. You have. Let's dump weapons, because these are very common to want to use. Format is one, if you're using dump, you'll probably use this correspondingly very common because you can get it to give you your output in a specific format. So, for example, we can get the name, and then we can get the object index out of this asterisk here. At least on other systems, is a wildcard, which means it should look at all of the ESMs in this current folder. That didn't seem to work last time, but let's try it. Ooh! Okay, but we've got True Flame and Hope's Fire here, so that actually did give us what we were expecting. I didn't give it the right field, though, so let's remove the format and try to get, like, just one specific thing. So
You
what
said
we're
it,
doing here, the formatting would be useful if you want to do a rebalance, which
right?
is a thing that I have specifically used tes3 command for in working on Starwind. We felt like it was hurting player customization, that all of the different clothing and armors and everything had different enchantments. So I used this tool to normalize the enchantment values for everything in the entire game. That way, people didn't feel compelled to wear specific items just because they could put good enchants on that one thing. Because
Right.
once you get enough people playing Morrowind together for long enough, like everybody has all the money. Like it doesn't matter anymore. We're just trying to have fun.
Yeah. Would you mind, since you're talking about dumping, because as a beginner, there's actually a command that I think it was you that taught me that I'm finding it very useful. And this is actually useful for the non-tech savvy people, writers, people that are interested in writing dialogue, designing quests. Apparently, with dump, you can actually take all of the lines of every dialogue inside an ESP and you can dump it into a text file. Isn't that right?
Yeah, that's very easy to do.
Yeah, because
Although,
this is extremely, extremely helpful to do research. This is amazing. I have been
so
using this profusely.
I'm not sure if this redirect works on Windows terminals. Let's try it. Weapon weights.txt. And now we're kind of starting to get into a more like real practical use case for somebody. I'm a modder. I want to rebalance something. So what are the weights of all of the different weapons in the entire game? Because I want to get really specific and accurate with what everything weighs. So I
Nice.
test command.exe dump type weapons. I give the format of name and weight. That's all I actually care about. Of every ESM in my list, and then the greater than symbol, the little open sign there, should be a redirect. Oh, that didn't work. 7, do you know how to redirect a text file on Windows? Is that as easy to do?
I do have a working line here, I think. Yeah, that's gonna say greater than. Actually, it works. No, I think you want.
I bet that probably did work, and it's just complaining about something else stupid. Yeah, beautiful. So that is a totally valid redirect. I'll show that to you guys again because we weren't really sure if that worked up front. So boom, you've got your text file right here, all my weapon weights, everything. You can customize that as much as you want. You could make it do like Herdrex said, you could make it do dialogues. So let's try that. Now for
That's
dialogue, there's 2 types. They're split across a tree, which is kind of weird. The dialogues would be type info and type file. Oh. And we'll just dump it out of everything at once. Dialogues.txt. And that's gonna take a moment or two. We should take a water cooler break while we wait on that to finish.
you did that for the master file, the
Yeah.
Morrowind. Oh, okay.
Uh-oh. I don't want to let that run for too long. Yeah, there he goes.
Awesome. Yeah, I
Press
love that one. This is one of my favorite things to do.
We're looking at 42 megs of raw text from having done that, but it does absolutely work.
Sometimes when I'm doing research, Dene, you and I were talking about this a little bit earlier, and Dene is probably going to talk about this at length in her workshop. But when it comes to lore compatibility, when you want to make your mod kind of works with what other people have already done, this is an invaluable tool. So you can just dump all the dialogue of a certain mod into a text, and it's much more user friendly and quick to do keyword searching. I was looking into Tharana, for example, wanted to see what Brother Melchior Dark was doing with that. And I just did that and I could find all the instances. Just amazing. Extremely useful.
Now, when we actually go in here and open this up, though, you can see this is kind of not ideal, right? This is a fairly raw format. It's telling us like information about the dialogue tree, what comes before, what comes after, and then you do get the actual dialogue responses. So maybe we could go and try to filter this out so it looks a little bit nicer, right?
Oh yeah.
Let's get rid of our redirect, and then throw a format argument on there. And we'll just ask for response. I've never actually tried to do those for dialogues before. So, whoa! Okay. But that does work. So you can filter it out so it's just the IDs and the dialogue responses. It's probably not entirely useful if you don't at least know the ID. And there you go. You can do that with pretty much any format that you want. Does anybody have like specific things that they might want to dump out, specific types of records that they might want to look at? Maybe like a landscape or something? Let's not try to look at landscapes in tes3 command, please. But it's one of those things that if you need to do anything involving landscape data at all, this is not your friend. Unless you want to delete it, which is a really handy thing to be able to do that I wanted to talk about a little bit.
Go ahead.
This is probably a bad idea, but I don't have any major city mods in my list right now. So we're going to go blast Balmora out of existence. This is the red here, and we're just going to have to deal with it. So we're going to do tes3cmd.exe delete. And since this is an exterior, there's 3 different types of things that we actually need to delete. Being the cell itself, it's an exterior, so it's got path grids. And then you also need to delete the landscape. I might flub this part a little bit because the syntax is slightly different than what I'm used to. But it should be, because this is an exterior, we open with parentheses. This is how it is in the plugin. And then we do the coordinates, which I believe for at least one of the cells in Balmora is a -3, 2. And then we put these fancy backslashes here before the parens because those are special characters according to tes3command. So we just do the backslashes to make it not yell at us. And then at the end we say what plugin we're trying to delete it out of. One of the disadvantages of using tes3command, though, is that if you're doing big stuff like this on the ESM files, especially, which you generally shouldn't do, this is horrible, it's slow. It's a fairly old application. It's written in Perl, so yeah, it's not the fastest. But going along with that, though, because it's written in Perl, that's why it's usable for people on all operating systems and sort of loosely both engines. Not really that part. But yeah, this is the command that you can use to delete the entirety of an exterior. So somebody in the chat earlier this morning was talking about a mod that was incompatible with BCOM and wanted to delete some of the edits that BCOM had made to some interior cells. So let's start out how we can do that for interiors, because this would be pretty much the same thing. They said they were having problems with tel3ctor. So I'm going to dump real quick and make sure that I actually know the name of that cell. Type cell, and we'll match, which isn't exact. So you can get kind of fuzzy with this. If you don't really know what something is called, you can just match for it.
By the way, Sector, the matriarch asks, how likely and or beneficial would a graphic user interface for tes3command be? So if you would you mind doing that for us as a 2090 thing?
Well, this is something I don't know if I've actually talked with G7 about this or not, but this is something that I think their Rust lib would be really useful for. I do think that a GUI for this app would be very useful. And I know for a fact that that's true because people really like Enchanted Editor. And like what I'm talking about right here, going in and doing really precise, specific deletions in a plugin, that's one of the main things that people really like to do in Enchanted Editor, at least that I've
Right.
ever seen. So yeah, a GUI would be great, and Enchanted Editor can do some similar stuff to this. But you just have to go through the startup process.
Another common use case that I wanted to bring to the rookie table, I find, Sector, is the common command, which gives, this is a more niched usage, but when you're talking about compatibility, especially with older mods, and sometimes 2 different mods use the same IDs for a certain object, and that sometimes can be a problem. I've seen people use resources from, let's just say, London Brook. They take out Blender resources and sometimes they mess around a little bit with something that he did, change a texture or something, but leave the record ID the same. And that can create a problem. The common command gives you all the common records between 2 plugins. I've been finding that also really useful.
Oh yeah, that is a really nice one. I wonder if there is anything in my list right now that I could use to show that off. Let's take a look real quick.
Yeah. More and more people are changing things from OAMB data to Tamriel data and London Brook Outlanders resources. And sometimes they forget that it would be much better if you're changing something, you got to give a very specific name. Because if you change the original, yeah, then
And in general, outside of test3 command, right, this is good practice if you're using resources and you're making adjustments to them, or sometimes even if you are using resources, depending on how you're using it,
right.
it's nice to just make your own ID for something. Because sometimes
I'm
it's
not,
going to make a light replacer or a mesh replacer or something, and it's going to affect your mod adversely if you don't.
right.
But that's a really good command to call out. I don't think that I have anything in my list that would highlight common, but we have something very similar in the diff function, which is the opposite of common, but it's still handy.
Yeah.
So
You just read my mind because I would wanted you to talk a little bit about diff. I've been finding that extremely useful as well.
yeah, and so the diff command is probably exactly what it sounds like. It will tell you the differences between types or between two plugins. There's multiple different diffs that it can do. So let's check out let's do a 2.1 on Morrowind.esm and adamantiumarmor.esp. Oh, perfect. That was my tab completion, by the way. I don't know if you might not have caught that. I just started typing ADA and then I hit tab and boom. So if you don't want to like bother typing out the names of the long ESP or something, the tab button will just do that for you.
Then it just brought something up like really interesting. She's talking about how she was updating her mod to a earlier version of Tamriel Rebuilt. Very useful for us to understand what's the difference between old Tamriel file and the new one, so you can kind of understand what to update or delete. So thank you, Danny.
Exactly, and it's great for that. Or if you have made an oopsie doopsie when you updated your mod on Nexus and you really don't know like where things changed, this is very handy. You can feed your original and your new version to this, and it'll say, hey, you added all of this stuff. Now, this doesn't say what things have changed. This is only telling me what things have been added. I'm probably not going to get any results for this, but just to show it off, there's another type of diff where you can do not equal, which is just, hey, did anything change between these two plugins? And there's also an E type of diff where you can say which things between these plugins are equal.
Thank you for bringing that up because sometime in the future, if we have time today, and you can also, that workflow you taught me where you learn how to read a plugin, that coupled with something like WinMerge, I think it's even better than diff. Because I'm at a point now that I can just really go to the guts, and especially when you talk about oopsies, I mean, just I became immune to mistakes, to my own mistakes. Because if you have a good resume of backups, if you can sort of have like a, a version, you have different versions of your mod as you're developing it, and you're converting them to JSON, and you're just using WinMerge and comparing the two versions, and it highlights all the differences as well. Amazing, amazing. We'll
Sure,
have to have you on a talk later to talk
and
just about that.
And while we're on the subject of being able to read a plugin, maybe let's just do that real quick. The Adamantium Armor plugin is real simple, right? We just
Right?
got a good idea of what it added compared to Morrowind.esm, right? Let's go through this top to bottom here. We have some new Armo, which is armors, adamantium boots, bracers, cures, greaves, pauldrons. Okay. We have some new body records, which is body parts. So it's the parts that on your actual body that the armor goes. They go together. It's kind of a weird system. Let's not spend too much time explaining that. But it adds armor and body parts. That's the only new stuff. We did a diff on it real quick, and we saw it changes Aldrune, Balmora, Caldera, Vivek, and his chest, Meldor's chest specifically, because he is the main guy that sells it. So
Hmm.
probably the rest of these other guys have it in their inventory, I would guess, as a restocking item. Now we can go just take a look at we can do the full diff.
While you're
You
typing, Danny asks if diff can be used to generate a quick change log when releasing an update.
know, you could sort of. Um, Let me scroll up a little bit and see if it actually showed it. Yeah, when you do a diff, it will create an output text file for you. It gives you two. It gives you the one for the original plugin and one for the second plugin. So this helps you to understand if something has changed or not. But when you pull it up, I really would not use this for a change log. This is a full tes3 command dump of everything that has changed in between two plugins. It's not handy for change logs, really, unfortunately.
Okay.
That would be a cool 2090 thing for the new version, right? Anyway, here's our dump of the Adamantium Armor plugin, and we'll talk about what each of these different record types is as we go through this thing. This one is the tes3. This is the header. A lot of you are probably familiar with interacting with a mod's header because of Rymash. You have to sync a mod's masters. This is what it does. In Morrowind.exe, every mod has a list of masters inside of it, and then it will also store the exact size of that master file. It expects them to be a particular size, exactly, down to the last byte. So if anything in there is changed for any reason, then Morrowind.exe will give you just stupid errors. This is why you get that error that says, so one of your, well, everybody in the audience knows what I'm talking about. One of the plugins in your order may have changed and the masters are not accurate or something to that effect. It's a meaningless error. Inside
Right.
of the header is also a special version tag, and there is a bit in here that says if it is a master file. This is where a mod or a plugin will actually get the meaning that it is a master file. It's not by being named an ESM, that's part of it, but they're named ESMs because the construction set will flip this on. And that's pretty much the only real distinction between the two at all. Just a little bit of stuff here. The author and the description of a plugin are also here, and it also says how many things are in it. So there's 22 things in here. It's actually a pretty simple little plugin. Here's Meldor's chest. This is Meldor's chest. This is the ID of it. This is the specific NIF file it uses. It's called a chest. It has a width, which is how many things it can hold. Here's all the crap that's inside of it. And you can see the stars are the specifically modified bits. So we added some new stuff.
Right.
These are the body parts. So this is where it actually says, like, you put something on your arm and it uses this mesh. And there's one of these for every different part of the body. It's basically just a suit of armor. It's
Right.
really, really competitive. There are a handful of cell records in here, which is kind of where things are slightly more interesting. The armor is actually placed in a handful of areas, and you can see like where it's at. In a smaller mod, This can be a really good way, like if you don't know what a mod does or what it is, or you're kind of skeptical that it might be doing something weird in your game, this can be
Hmm.
a good way to figure that out. Do a dump
Detailed
of it
dev,
and just
yeah.
read it.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No,
Detail,
go ahead.
Detail was asking if is it possible to export dialogue of specific races? Can you filter that for race? All the dialogues of a certain race.
Oh yeah, totally, dude. Let me
Beautiful.
just double check the fields. So we'll look for type info morrowind.esm. I just want to look at a couple of them real quick. Um, what we can probably do is this. That might be a little bit naive. Ah, yeah, here we go. Filtering dialogue results is a little bit trickier because the filters are spread out across 3 or 4 different things here. You can kind
Right.
of do this. So like this specific dialogue option, this is where the actual filters are. So we can just read this very directly. This only works if you are not a dark elf. So
Hmm.
you can do not race pretty handily. And that's all that we actually get out of that is things that are not a specific race. We could probably do a slightly more advanced filter and say race dot star comparison.
Since we're approaching the end, I wanted to ask you, this is just to illustrate, but again, going back to the goat, can you talk a little bit about the true power of tes3 command, which is the modify command, and the batch scripts, and what it does and what it's capable of doing? Because for those that are willing actually to look into this and study it, then the fun truly begins, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is where things start getting the most handy, right? We've talked about dump, we've talked about delete, we've talked about diff. We touched on clean a little bit, but there is not really a ton to say about clean except to go into the specific types of cleans, which you can find on the tes3 command documentation, which we'll be linking for you guys later today when we're done. So there's not a ton of other big ones that I think we should look at. Let's go ahead and just double check real quick though, in case. We have active, clean, common, delete, diff, dump, ESM, ESP. These are real nice ones that I want to just give honorable mention to. Again, this is something that you can do in Rymash. Maybe you don't like Rymash. Maybe Rymash doesn't work on your computer, but just know you can do this there. You can use tes3 command to convert a master file to and from a regular ESP. It's very easy to do. tes3 command.exe ESP Morrowind. It's not case sensitive, but I'm still used to that. And boom, now we've made Morrowind.esm into an ESP, and we can go right back and forth. And that's fine. It was already there, not a big deal. When you are making mods and you want to try to do a patch mod for somebody's, it can be very handy to turn that thing you're trying to make a patch for into an ESM. Then you can go and make your mod, convert the original one back to an ESP, and everybody's good to go.
Yep.
Now,
Madness basic workflow. But
Modify is a little bit weird because unfortunately you need a different version of tes3 command in order to actually use it. It was broken in the final release of tes3 command, and so you have to go download the slightly older one here. They're mostly the same thing. The only difference is that with the GitHub version, you can't change stuff, which, like Herdrax said, is the coolest bit. Give me just a moment to actually get this set up here, and we'll do some rebalances and like maybe we'll take a couple of ideas perhaps. But we can make a couple very easy and simple plugins that apply across our entire setup this way.
just so people can have an idea while you're setting things up, Abbott back in the day took Perl, which is a programming language, and he created a batch script that pretty much automates the randomization of placing trees in the world. So just so you can have an idea what is possible with things like that. If you want to really get into it, yeah.
And by the way, Herdrax, if you could check that document I had set up, I believe that I
Okay.
actually did have a link to Abbott's blog uh, inside of there,
We did
where
put it
he
in the
talked
chat.
about
Yeah.
it.
The specific link where he talks about that tree randomization, it's right here.
It's auto rename it. That's fine. I don't care.
Let me just grab the file. Okay.
Let's make a new folder. I hate using Windows. I'm so sorry. If I appear as if I don't know how to use a computer, I kind of don't because I haven't been on a Windows machine in like 4 years, so I apologize because if I appear slightly illiterate, I kind of am.
I'm uploading the cheat sheet to the chat so everybody can get that. We're approaching the end now. But there you go. Right there. The sector kindly compiled it for us.
Now we've got our tes3 command 37.exe set up. So an easy example of why you might want to do this would be to adjust the enchantment value of some objects. This is something that I already mentioned a little while ago. So like type whip, let's match ebony items. Some of the ebony items have like hysterically badly balanced stats for the enchantments. Yeah, perfect. So just as a random example, this will give us all of our items that are ebony. Let's go. Not only are we going to normalize their enchantments, we're going to make them really strong, like hella strong. We're going to make the ebony item enchantments way better than they were when they started off. Um, so we'll do well, first we're going to modify. We'll still filter it on weapons, and we'll also only do it on ebony weapons. And specifically, we want to do a submatch so that it will only change part of our object. Um, the replacement syntax in tes3 command is very simple. So you have to be kind of aggressive with your filtering, or you can touch a bunch of crap that you really don't want to. So we'll
Mhm.
submatch enchantment And then this is where things are kind of weird because the replace syntax is a sort of semi-programmer language called regex. So what I like to do is start with my two quotes. You'll have three slashes in between. In between the first two slashes is the thing that you want to modify. And then in the second set of slashes is what it should be after. And I'm going to set their enchantment values to 200. So what this means, start to finish, we're going to tes3cmd modify weapons that are ebony. Specifically, we're modifying the enchantments, and we're replacing everything, we don't care what it is, with 200. And all of that is happening on Morrowind.esm. And by the way, if you didn't know this already, don't modify Morrowind.esm directly. My filter didn't really work very well because I actually applied this to all of the different fields.
Right, you rookie. But just so people can understand, because somebody may be wondering why go through all that trouble if you can do that much easier inside the construction set. Well, what is demonstrating there is that you can turn that into a batch command. And if you're creative enough, like Abbott was with that tree thing, you can create all sorts of automations for other people, which is another different realm. Which is not we're not even talking about modding anymore. This is just a tool for a modder, even sometimes. You can create all sorts of automated batches with Modify and make it an independent thing that other people can use it instead of just doing what he did there, having to type all these things, right? So that's where the true power of Modify can come in the right hands. For those that are interested in getting a little bit more thorough with this, yeah.
It does take a little bit of practice on the regex, but if you want to do big, broad, sweeping changes like this, then this is especially where it comes in handy. The tree rotation script is very nice. There are some bad scripts out there that people use. I think I have seen Detail Devil with a BCOM compatibility one floating around, which will delete specific objects out of the BCOM plugins to make it compatible with some of his mods or
Yeah.
some of. Forgive me if I'm like putting scripts in your mouth there, Detail Devil. Um,
Then I mentioned that Abbott once made a name randomizer for her Outlaws mod, and it was a bat, and it ran on the mod. That was a beautiful thing. Abbott just being Abbott.
and by the way, because you guys keep bringing up the cool things that Abbott has done, I would be very remiss if I didn't mention one other feature. It's probably going to be very rarely used, but um, Abbott is one of the few people who have ever taken advantage of the fact that you can actually run whole Perl scripts inside of tes3cmd. It is extremely ridiculously powerful to the point that you can make other scripts that run inside of it. In fact, I don't even remember the syntax for that off the top of my head. Is that
Yeah.
a yeah, that's part of modify. So if you had one, you do like modify dash dash program file just enchantments .pl. We wouldn't really need a whole Perl file to do this for enchantments, but it is something that you could get it to do. Some of the coolest things to have been done with tes3cmd have basically been Perl files. Some of you in the audience are OpenMW users. If you guys have ever used Waz's light fixes tool, that is
Mm-hmm.
actually tes3cmd. Literally, he made it slightly OpenMW aware and made it do a really, really specific thing, but it's still just fundamentally tes3cmd. I think that's actually one of the best examples of something that one could actually do with it.
Indeed. I have used that a lot.
And if
I
you're
love
not familiar with what Wazabear's light fixes is, it is a script that OpenMW users use pretty commonly to tune their light settings.
it. Mm-hmm.
the way that it works is actually very similar to what we're doing here. In fact, since we've already completely and totally hosed this install, I'd like to illustrate how we can use this on more than Morrowind.esm. We sort of talked about this a little bit, but the asterisk or the star is your wild card inside of a terminal. So it just means anything. It doesn't matter what it is, do it on anything. So you type star.esp, star.esm, and that'll run on everything inside of here.
We have a question here from Upanishads. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. They ask, could you create a humongous line that changed enchantments, weight, dialogue, landscape, etc., all in one go, and it would change all of that for your ESP? And while I'm at it, G7 just mentioned back in the day, I made a lot of Perl scripts for ts3 command before we had alternatives. I wrote the original light fixes too. And we all know, for those of you that don't know G7, he is one of the OGs of this community. We pretty much owe a lot of what we have in terms of fun. We owe it to him. We can lay it at his feet. This man was one of the first to actually look at the raw code of Morrowind and break it down. Stellar blipping task. Trust me. So props,
G7 is
brother.
G7 is an absolute space alien, and I love them very much. They are the
Oh yeah,
best.
right. Actually, a lot of these people in the community, I'm thinking, you guys remember back in the old days of YouTube? Most of you are probably not old enough to remember. Remember that Lonely Girl 15? You weren't old enough to remember that sector, right? Which was a production. It was a production company disguised as a female vlogger, like this girl doing girly vlogs, but it was actually a whole web series. I'm convinced that all these people, G7 and Merlord and Tell Shadow, you go to their page, they have like what 1,000 mods. Tell Shadow's not an individual; it's a gaming company, just farting amazing mods. It's just I'm humbled. Jokes aside, yeah, this is a pretty awesome community. And paraphrasing Robin Williams, if the world ends in an apocalyptic fallout, all we'll have is Keith Richards smoking a cigarette, a couple of cockroaches, and Abbott working on Morrowind. I'm sure of it. Because the fortitude of that man, he never stops. Yeah. Yeah, tell Shadow. I know. I'm just joking. I'm sorry. Exactly. Tell Shadow is an AI designed to create Morrowind mods. I'm convinced. They are not human. They can't be human. This
Let's
this I'm sorry, go ahead. I just went on this. We need to answer you, Upanishads. I'm sorry. I went on a tangent. I tend to
oh,
ramble. I apologize.
oh no, you're totally fine. So, what you're asking about Upi, this is why you want to make batch scripts, right? Because you could do a lot with one line in tes3 command, but what you're talking about, like dumping and deleting multiple different types of things, would you mind repeating the question so I understand it a little bit better precisely?
Could you create a humongous line that changed enchantments, weight, dialogue, landscape, etc., all in one go, and it would change all of that for your ESP?
Oh, no, especially not if you're doing modify. Modify is dumb. Modify is dumb. It's very, very simplistic. I can't really scroll that far back, I don't think. Oh, yes, I can. But you can see right here, the format that I set it changed all of the fields in the weapon data to 200. It's not very smart. And so if you try to modify multiple different things at once, you're going to make something explode. But
Right.
this is why making bad scripts is handy, because what you could do instead of that, if I can find my actual install directory, is you can just go in here and make a new text file, and we'll call it modify all the things dot. Yes, that's fine. I know. And we can literally just go edit it in Notepad, and we can put our tes3 commands in here. You could put an arbitrary number of them in here. It doesn't really matter like at all. If you wanted, you could do multiple deletions in here. There's not really a specific limit to what you can do inside of the file. If you need to do it on more than one line, just stick it in a batch file, and you can actually just double click on it and run it as a script. Which, if you would like to find an example of that, check out that tree rotation script that Abbott put out.
Right.
I don't believe that they're here, and I actually didn't remember till just now to get the link. But I think that our friend Static also has a really nice collection of tes3command and tes3lint scripts just sort of laying around in MMC somewhere that somebody could dig up.
I had a question to ask you, and I saved it for the end because as a beginner, there's a particular command that it
Mhm.
seems tempting, but it's just so general that I'm thinking, well, it's called fix it. And the description goes, TSC3 command fixes everything it knows how to fix. That's kind of vague, right? What the hell is this?
I suppose this is kind of getting into the different specific things that it can clean. And I do think that deserves a bit of an honorable mention, even though it is kind of tedious. So let's pull it up on here. This is the actual tes3 command documentation. We'll zoom in a little bit so everybody can read it nice and easily. Like Herdrex said, it does it on the 10, fixes everything it knows how to fix, which means it cleans everything in your load order. It updates all the headers and syncs them with their masters, which you all are, boom, probably familiar with from RIMASH. Again, it also will make a merged patch for you, which is not really something that people do anymore. And it will reset the dates on Bethesda files back to their original dates, which some of you MO2 folks might need. Let's itemize each of those and talk about why they might be good and why they might not.
Okay.
Cleaning all of your plugins sounds good, but is possibly a very bad time. Some plugins are made not to be cleaned. I have made mods like this. There are specific things that you can do with a mod to force it to behave like vanilla. In my mod, for example, I made some edits to game settings or GMSTs that were identical to what's in Morrowind.esm. That's technically a dirty edit. Any cleaning software that we use today is going to try to clean that mod, and it will break my mod. There are many more like it out there. Well, I shouldn't say that there are many, but there's enough that you shouldn't go aimlessly cleaning everything in your list because something will break and you don't know what. And that's part of why it's dangerous because
Right.
once broken, who knows? Everything in your list just got cleaned. You're going to have to go and individually replace all of them with the old ones. That also includes the vanilla plugins as well. Morrowind.esm, Tribunal.esm, Bloodmoon.esm. That's a very bad time. Don't clean the vanilla plugins at all.
No. Okay. Thank you. Going back to the Perl script thing, G7 actually, if you can open your Discord window sector, he gave you a Perl script that he did. And I think you can probably read it and sort of explain to us what it does and the usefulness right there.
Oh, cool. This sounds fun. Well, I don't want to
I'm sorry.
open it. Don't go
I
and
think I
exit.
interrupted you, brother. I'm sorry. I was talking about G7.
Oh no, you're all good. Forgive me. What was I in the middle of?
You were finishing up describing why Fixit is not, is it probably uh, recommended for a beginner to use it, cleaning
Oh,
all of the plugins, and you were talking about your own mod that you leave what technically the program will interpret as a dirty reference, but it actually has a function that you
Right.
need that. Yeah.
The big one with Fixit is this. It's this first one here. Clean all your plugins.
Right.
The other ones, you actually, if you play on vanilla, this is a great thing to have, right? People on vanilla will do this, synchronize plugin headers to masters. They do this all the time. They have to. It's very annoying if you don't. Nobody on the planet should use tes3 command multi-patches anymore, period. There's tes3 merge, there's delta plugin, there's omw llf. There are better options for the functionality that this gives you. Reset dates on Bethesda files. This I don't fully understand why this would be useful, except a vague understanding that it would be more relevant for people who are on vanilla.
Right. Professor Armitage asks, maybe you have an answer for this. He said, Darkness, Great Dwemer Ruins, says cleaning it will break it, but I've never been clear on what's in it to do that. Do you know specifically about that mod as an example of a functionality that is interpreted as a dirty edit, but it actually isn't?
Um, so 9 out of 10 times, if tes3 command, I'll show you the specific clean, because these are all of the different things it does when it cleans, and there's specific operations that happens. Usually if tes3 command screws up and cleaning a mod breaks something, it's this, dupes.
Oh, okay.
Cleans other complete records duped from masters. Or instances. Sometimes it will look at an object and it thinks that you haven't changed it. It thinks it's a duplicate of what's already in Morrowind.esm. So, for
Mm-hmm.
example, it might look at your plugin and think you have two chairs at the exact same place or two doors. This happens a lot with doors. This is why cleaning Starwind breaks, because there will be 2 or 3 or 5 or 6 doors in sequence right next to each other, and tes3 command will look at that and go, "Oh, you idiot! A bunch of doors right next to each other. That's all the same exact place." And it deletes all those doors that your mod actually relies on existing, so people can go through them. Maybe you have
Wow.
a maybe you have a script condition that will disable one door and then it switches to another door later, and then it switches to another door later. That's the kind of stuff that tes3 will really screw up.
Right. Another thing that I wanted to confirm with you that I separated again for the end, it's regarding landscape dirty edits, which I have been noticing that if you clean those using ts3 command, it cleans the cell part, but the actual landscape texture data is sort of it remains in the file. It's kind of a junk data. Can you confirm that? Because more often than not, I go in there after I cleaned it. Say, for example, -7, -9, exterior cell. It was just a dirty record. ts3 command cleans it. If I open it up on the CS, nothing shows. But if I turn it into JSON or TOML and I actually open OVS code, there's still junk data in there. For people, for example, doing showcases for Tamriel Rebuild where file size matters, all that junk info regarding landscape is a huge chunk. You can save a lot on an ESP size if you actually go in, convert it to JSON, and delete that manually, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Landscape records are huge. They're easily the largest single piece of information that is going to be in the plugin.
Right.
That's a lot of the data that is taken up by the was it like 56 megs or whatever of Morrowind.esm. Morrowind.esm is there's more dialogue in there than landscape, but it is a very, very huge chunk of it for sure. And just to elaborate on that, like slightly further, why a cell and a land are two separate things. They're not organized alphabetically on here. I hate this. Inside of a plugin, there's a couple of different things that actually mean a cell or an area in the world. You have a cell, which is the thing and the stuff in it, and then you have the landscape, which is the
Landscape.
actual land. But these are segmented away from each other in a plugin, and they're not actually related. There's a
Yeah.
bunch of reasons for this, but it's partly just because that way you can have the cell be for interiors or exteriors, and then maybe if you need to, you load a landscape on top of that.
Yeah, because from my experience, just standard default clean usage of the S3 command, it deletes the cell dirty reference, but it leaves the landscape reference there. And this is a huge amount of data just sitting there doing nothing, right?
That's really interesting. That's probably an oversight in tes3 command, and that's another thing that I want to point out is that this application has not been developed for about 10 years now. So there are some things that it should do that it can't, like reading landscapes. It doesn't recognize any of that data mostly. Um, and there's a lot of weird things that, like, maybe not a lot of weird things, but there's bits and pieces where it's just not doing everything that it can or should.
Right.
This is a really cool little Perl script, by the way. I like this. And I super appreciate you doing this, by the way, because I can't write Perl at all.
That's the G7 one, right?
Yep,
Nice.
this is real simple. So top to bottom, it opens Morrowind.esm and it gives you renamed stuff.esm. It actually sets up a plugin header that says G7 wrote this. It goes through every static in the game, specifically ones for data interiors, and then it changes the prefix from in underscore to G7 underscore, and then it just puts that in the ESM. So
Mhm.
this is exactly what you were just talking about, Herdrax, where if you're using resources from a mod, DR data, like every single thing in DR data is prefixed with dr underscore. So
Yep.
you could use this to just rename all of the objects in that plugin and have your own unique copies of it. You probably shouldn't have a copy of the entirety of dr data in your own mod, but
Just for the instances where you're actually changing an asset, right? For the classic example, you're changing the texture on a mesh from maybe DR or terminal data or OAMB. That's when it's useful to rename it. But that's a pretty interesting script. So that's
yeah,
the power right there. I'm sorry, go
or
ahead.
or you know those changes you make could be something just as simple as like you take a light and make it a little bit brighter.
Yep,
That way, you know, every single light in Tamriel rebuilt is not suddenly twice as bright because you wanted it to be a little bit brighter in your house.
exactly.
Ah,
Well,
Um,
we're an hour and a half in, but if you want to keep going, I could think of a bunch of things to ask you, but I don't want to keep you too
I
long.
I am absolutely fine to keep going. I would like to take a quick restroom break though. Let's
Nope. Oh, no problem.
take a moment. Yeah, give me just a moment here, and we can dig into some more stuff with this.
Sure. That's a first, but totally cool. Oh, yes, sir. But enters Dene in my life, and then she asks exactly the right questions. I strongly recommend if we have some rookies here in the audience watching. Oh my God, if Danny still has a spot for you to be her mentee, totally recommend it. The matriarch is the best. Thank you, Sophie. Thank you so much. Yeah, S3ctor is amazing. He has this sort of talent of demystifying things. He helped me a lot initially. Like I owe a lot to him. He has this didactic quality about him because I was always afraid of, for example, looking at the guts of a plugin file, converting it to JavaScript, and trying to understand what each field means. But yeah, he's pretty good at doing that.
All right, guys, thank you for your patience. I appreciate it.
No problem.
I would like to try to get a couple valid working modifications here. Um, there are some handy things that you can do with this, but it's been a little while since I've actually tried to do a big sweeping modify like this. Let's try to make everything really heavy.
If we can have it as an extra, would you mind just demonstrating to people G7 stool real quick? Because converting is so simple and just going through it really quick, if
Yeah,
you're willing. Yeah, because I think it's worth it. As I'm speaking from the perspective of the novice, and if I can do it, like everybody can.
let's do an actual
It's-
run of this.
Because when you convert it to the JavaScript file, in my personal opinion, it is actually more didactic than reading these abbreviated expressions because they give full descriptions of what everything means. It's really, really useful. And if you open that on something like VS Code and you click on a certain part of a bracket, you can look to the right and you can see where it ends. So you start to visualize the whole blocks and what they all mean and where does a cell begins and where does it end, landscape modifications, landscape textures, which is the dreadful LTEX, which we were talking about this yesterday on Massive Juice's workshop, where sometimes you have an asterisk, that texture marked as modified. That's just junk information that if you know what you're doing, you can just go in there and delete it. And just really, really simple, but really powerful.
Wow, that was shockingly fast for a Perl script. How do you manage to make Perl fast? You're an alien, man. What the hell? All right, that's cool. So let's take a look and see what is actually inside our rename stuff.esm. That was so fast, if you blinked and you might have missed it.
What is a Morrowind event without G7 doing a flex? It's not a Morrowind event at all. So,
That's totally fair.
right? I mean, name me one that he didn't dazzle us with something. Just you can't find it.
The ones that happened before he was here.
Well, okay, granted. 1975. Well,
So yeah, these are all of the original vanilla Daedric interior stacks, and just the names have been slightly remodified. And it's even set up its own header and author and description. There's not actually a meaningful description here, but it's there. There's an empty number of records though, so I will ding you like 1 point for that, because I think technically vanilla might not load this. But this still gets the point across, right? We did a big data transform. We changed the IDs of, I don't know, this is like 30 or 40 things at once, right? Very quick
mhm.
process. I want to go back and try to do the weights. It is a little bit finicky to try to like actually make edits in here like this, because you have to sort of just stumble around and see if you actually get the matches right.
Right. G7 said the record count isn't actually used in vanilla, but it is good practice to set it.
Oh, well, okay. I figured that was the whole point of its existence in the first place.
G7 asks, did you go over how to use bat files? I think it's the most useful for regular people. Yeah, kind of. I don't know if you were here when we were talking about modify and making batches. That's where we actually started talking about you and Abbott and the useful things that you have made with bats. But specifically, do you have something in mind, G7, that we didn't cover? That sector could go over it? Specific.
Well, let's do that Abbott thing. Do you have the we have the link in the chat, right?
Oh, he's talking like, for example, like for typical cleaning mods. And then he's doing, you can drag and drop an ESP into the
Wait,
bat, for example. If you can check the See right there.
Does this one, will this give you like a text output? Or it doesn't, does it save that text output anywhere? Regardless, let's just look. Go edit it notepad real quick.
It's saying assuming tes3 command is in data files / folder, it'll be in the command prompt.
So as just like a quick preview, this is very much the same syntax that you guys saw we were using before, just tes3 command clean. It's super simple, but having it in the batch file like this makes it a little bit easier because we can just go and take, for example, where's the original adamantium armor plugin? Let's go drag this up here.
Massive Juice sends his regards, Sector. Thank you for dropping by, brother.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here, Mr. Juice. And you just drag it onto the plugin and
More
thank
info? Yeah,
you
run
much.
anyway.
They protected my PC, guys. Oh, okay, cool, wonderful. Super not used to the Windows terminal, but yeah, this will tell you how it cleaned it, what it did, every single thing that it got rid of. Maybe if you want to, this can be handy to save into a text file. But yeah, that's
Those
pretty much.
lines that says clean this and clean that, is that the debug function that it already offers as default? Or does debug offer something more thorough?
Let me run this again because I'm not exactly sure what you're asking, unfortunately.
The options debug, turn on debug messages. I was always curious if it offers you something extra in terms of actually knowing what was changed. If you go to the documentation, well, it's just there. Yeah, right up there, the first one.
Huh. You know, to be honest, I actually don't have the faintest idea. I've never even tried it. Now I want to know. We're gonna find out together. Test3cmd.exe clean debug adamantium armor.esp.
Whoa.
Okay, well,
Wow.
that's
Okay.
I think this is literally dumping every single. This is not useful. This is not useful. This is way too much.
Okay.
But you can get a little bit of an idea of what's going on here under the hood because some of this is the actual low level representation of this data inside of the plugin. These are rotations and positions for some object. That's all I really get out of that. I wouldn't suggest anybody ever do that. But yeah, that's how you can use a batch file. It's very quick and easy. Many of them are not even that complicated. You just make sure that the batch is in your system or your data files directory, and that tes3 command is also in there as well, just hanging out, and you double click it and run it, and boom. This one is not made to be ran that way, but many are, like Abbott's tree rotation plugin, which I wanted to try to use real quick. Not looking for about tree fitting.
Then it asks, would it be worthwhile updating ts3 command, or is it redundant considering the tools we already have?
I think it is redundant considering the tools that we already have. Yeah. And also, even among Morrowind people, as crazy as we are, you're not really going to find a programmer that like actively wants to update that. It's kind of like mlocks in that way, unfortunately.
Okay.
And in fact, because you mentioned it, Perdrax, I want to step out just a little bit of tes3 command and just give you guys like a taste of tes3com, because
Oh, thank you.
our our goal here in talking about all of this tes3 command stuff is to help to give you a tool set that is not um, married to working any one specific way on any one specific platform. And one of
Precisely.
the ways that this is made very easy is tes3com. It works very similarly to tes3 command, and I think I'll just go ahead and do this in the terminal because it's fairly simple. You can actually just drag ESP files on tes3con as far as I understand, and this will work fine. You do not have to use it this way.
Oh,
But
Danny just said that they're saving TS3 converter for another workshop. But I mean, just as a quick bonus, Danny, just
oh, sure, I don't want to. That's it. This is all I'm going to do. I'm not going into
oh,
detail on
look at this. This is so
uh,
beautiful. This is the one thing that I've been using the most.
this is very similar to the output that you can get from tes3 command, and the Rust stuff that Greatness 7 has cooked up for us. That everybody is actually available to use, although that's not accessible. This is what I hope will get us a better version of tes3 command eventually. I don't want to step too much into tes3con, but I just want to kind of illustrate it as a big part of the reason why I think we can just have something better eventually.
Yeah, there's another thing just to whet people's appetite, Sector, because yet another thing that you taught me in the beginning and why I won the lottery having you as my first teacher is the deadly combination between G7's TS3 converter and Evil Eye's CS.js web dialog editor, because that is absolutely amazing, especially for rookies. Just one thing and one thing only, guys. It makes you immune from topic contamination, for one. Spell checking, it has everything. So, yeah, these tools are amazing, and it pays off to research. The concept of having a hybrid workflow, I think for me as a beginner has been helping me tremendously. You know, developing the dialogue, for example, using CS.js, using G7's tools to learn how to read a plugin file, understand what everything is going on in my mod. Yes, it's been helping me a lot. Even OpenMWCS, which everybody complains about, but the search function in there and all the filters that you can use it, ooh, beautiful. So
I think the
beautiful.
CS.js deserves a great shout out, regardless of the level of
Oh,
development
yes.
either construction set receives. Um, there is certainly something to be said for just doing that stuff in a browser. It's very handy, and
Oh, yeah. I
this
love
kind
Evil Eye.
of does that for us. Yeah.
Evil Eye
Um,
is yet another one of these members that had these inept names because he should be called Amazing Sexy Cool Dude instead of Evil Eye. It's just like Melchior Dark, right? Such a Care Bear cool guy. Johnny Hostile. Anyway, yeah. Shout out to
there's
Evil Eyes
one.
CSJS.
There's one more thing that I want to explore a little bit with tes3 command as well, because
Go
it is
ahead.
one of the most important and practical use cases that we really haven't looked into much yet. And that
Oh,
is the mystery mod, right? A lot of times something happens in your game. Why is this weapon so heavy? Why is this weapon so strong? If you ever see me help somebody with the mystery mod issue in chat, I bet you $50. The first thing that I'm going to do is download some mod in their setup that they're talking about, and start going through it with tes3 command to try and understand what's happening. Here's how you can do that as well, right? Let's take a random line of dialogue. Um, let's say, for sake of argument, that I don't know what plugin KS comes from. I know KS is from Morrowind.esm, but let's just say I don't, right? So I know there's this old guy, and his name's Chaos. But maybe I don't even remember that much. Maybe I just remember he said, report to Chaos Cosades. So, okay, that's all I have to go off of is just a little bit of what he said, and I'm going to try to find him based on that. So
Okay.
we'll dump type info, and then we're going to match what do you mean? And it should be fairly close. Start.esm, start.esp. So just to double check myself, test3 command dump infos matching what do you mean everything in the folder. Yeah, let's try that.
Wow.
Okay, what do you mean, as it turns out, is a fairly common thing for NPCs to say. So let's not do that. Let's filter it a little bit more. I think the exact syntax was like this. What do you mean report to Chaos? So I remember he says that. We have
He's
a much
very American arachnid. That's why he doesn't say Caius. He says Caius. Arachnid is just messing with you, saying sector's other weakness is pronunciating Caius Cosades.
I'm super bad with the imperial pronunciations. I apologize.
You Anglo-Saxons butchering Latin languages. But this is an amazing thing. On that topic, can you do a search for information written inside a book or a note? Because that would be invaluable as well. Is there a filter for it, or is just dialogue?
Oh no, yeah, totally. So we can filter any piece of data in the entire set. So you want to do a book? Let's do a book. I already know what book I'm going to look for too. I bet a couple of you know
Nice.
I'm going to
Oh
look
my
for.
God.
Let me see. I have to remember the line. I have to remember the line. Polish my ear.
Is it
Boom.
just gonna,
That's so I just using the string polish my spear, I found the less the Argonian made.
okay, but you can search for keywords, not only title, right?
Yeah, so
Oh,
I'm doing a match here for polish my spear. And
this is
that's
beautiful.
look for that sentence in books. So you could use this like maybe we want to look for just books which mention the Dark Brotherhood for some reason.
This is invaluable for people that are want to getting into lore compatibility and using mods, doing research. Yeah, unbelievable. Very nice.
It's great for research, it's great for lore, and also like this is a legitimately practical thing. This is the mystery mod right here. Um, let's think of something else. For example, there is let's say Reeklings. Um, can somebody give me like a random item from Blood Moon? Something esoteric and rare that you would tend not to have, like Stalrim armor?
Been mental of woe.
Yeah, all right.
Again, Arachnid and Upanishads gave it as an example.
Mantle of Woe. This is a good one, right? Because mods like to screw with the Mantle of Woe. People mess with that all the time. And maybe something's wrong with my Mantle of Woe, and I don't know why. So let's look at everything that has any kind of reference to that in there. The Mantle of Woe is not a weapon.
There it is.
And you can kind of simulate this, right? Because I have multiple copies of bloodmoon.esm in here, so they're both the exact same thing. But if I had a bunch of mods that were actually altering it in here, you'd see those in here, you'd see all of those alterations, and then you can have a much more guided and useful troubleshooting experience. Because if you have that mystery mod situation, what you do is just try to find the part that you know is wrong or you think is wrong.
Right.
Um, for some people, sometimes it's a dialogue that just appears on every NPC in the game. So, all right, the first thing that you do is like, what mod is doing this? You come in here, you fire up tes3 command, and you dump the info, and then you can do a match on whatever is in that random dialogue. Or if the item is extremely heavy, you don't even actually need the ID of a lot of things. You can just look at it in the game, get its name, and then match for Mantle of Woe in here. That happens to be the exact same thing as the item ID, but it's often not. So this can even cut out an extra step for you in like putting your item on the ground, clicking on it on the console. Oh, okay, I
Right.
know what the ID of this thing is now. You can just take the experience that you're having without like getting super technical with it and go, okay, I know the name is Mantle of Woe, and bring that here, and the tool will do the trawling and digging in your load order for you.
Right. I skipped a question from our squad sister, tes3cmd. She asks you, have you ever used that version of ts3 command 85 made OMW Sounded cool. Wondering if I should add it to my tools. Sorry, Sophie, for skipping you. You know I love you. We all do.
Girl, you got to hit me in the DMs with that. I don't know what you're talking about. I really don't.
Um,
If I were to guess, my guess would be that Eddie added VFS support to the OpenMW to tes3 command, which is something that I wanted to do for a while. So that's probably very useful. Just at a guess.
Going back to that dump function that you're demonstrating to us, it seems to me that even though it is a very old tool, it does some things that not even the most up-to-date tool actually can provide to you, right? Because I can remember, I could be wrong. I'm a rookie after all, but using dump for research, for example, like exact matches, keywords, searching inside of a book, there doesn't seem to be anything else out there that allows you to do that kind of thing, right?
Not really, not as directly. You can accomplish this with tes3conv and a text editor, and tes3conv is great. I use it fairly regularly. There's nothing against it. It's just not as direct as this.
Right.
It's not like tes3conv is simple. It's made to be simple. You stick a plugin in it, it spits JSON back out in your face.
Because I was looking at this possibility of searching books. Not even the OpenMW construction set seems to have that filter available, right? Where you can just search inside a book. It offers all the options apart from that one. If you want to do a keyword search, a certain topic, is there ever any book inside Terminator built that mentions fire moth? You can actually do that kind of research, right? But here we can, so this is beautiful.
I
Then it
think that
mentions, I'm
I
sorry, go
think
ahead.
MWCS actually can do that filtering, but I wouldn't. I honestly I wouldn't do it there over here
Yeah. Then
unless
he's
you want.
mentioning a program called tes3cmd. It says that it's also useful for that kind of function to search keywords and stuff like that. And as far as the function text goes, Danny, I think it only searches dialogue and topics from journals. I don't remember actually searching inside book. I could be wrong, but at any rate, just knowing that this is yet another option to do it, this is pretty interesting. And you can make this into a text file, right? The dump as well.
Yeah, you can make this into a text file. It's very simple. I explained it a little bit before, but I'll show it again.
Yeah.
All you need to do is you type the greater than symbol and then the name of your text file. So like all mantles dot txt, and it's done. That's it. That's the whole thing. It'll spit all that out into your text file, and you're done.
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
In some cases, like when you're doing diffs, it will make these for you automatically. Actually, one of the cool things that I used dump for prior to having been aware of the existence of test3con was that I used the format argument to make JSONs out of plugins. It was probably as tedious and awful as you could imagine, but it was doable and it was very handy because I didn't have to write any of my own crap to deal with it. I just made my special tes3mp JSON and everything worked totally fine. Took like an
Beautiful.
to run, but it worked.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Man, we have a lot of useful information here on the chat. This one will be worth just consolidating everything to make it available.
Yeah,
Wow.
when this does go live, please, I encourage anybody to reach out to me in my thread if you have any questions about using tes3 command or getting it set up, or actually installing it in a system directory if you think that you might use it a lot. I didn't want to talk about that here because that's kind of a weird step to do, and I don't think most people would. I think most people will be fine just leaving it in data files and just remembering to do your little backslash. But if
Right.
you're picky, feel free.
One final question, real quick, to sort of wrap up this research function. The difference between dial record and info record is that info is going to do a search on dialogue responses, and dial is actually going to search for dialogue topics, right? So if I want to do a research, have somebody ever used this certain string as a topic, then I use dial, right?
90% of the time, you actually want to look at the infos. Um,
Okay,
the difference between dial and info is basically that. One is the empty topic that doesn't actually really have anything in it, but it has to exist. And then the other one, the info, is all of your responses, all of your filters, all of the stuff that you would actually see when you're screwing with dialogue in the construction set, mostly, is there in the info.
okay. So if I do a search for help me, it'll also show me if people have created a topic called help me, not only help me inside a response, right?
Yeah, if you want to do that, like if you just wanted to look at, we can narrow it down and we can just look at the names of topics and we can look at like Little Secret, for example. Every single one of these has the little secret dialogue. There's not actually a whole lot here, but we know
Okay,
that it's there. This is really useful if you want to check which mod adds a specific topic
exactly.
without being like bombarded and overwhelmed with it spitting out all of the dialogue at you,
Hmm.
because that's a lot of information. It's very overloading. If you try to parse that, it's ridiculous.
Okay. My brother, what a beautiful day. Thank you so much. Did anybody else have any other questions for Brother Sector? Otherwise, you can put it on the link that Dene just placed there. Happy birthday, Sector. Yes.
Thank you guys very much. I really appreciate it. I'm 27 years old today, or yesterday, I guess. I feel old, so don't tell me I'm 27 years young,
Oh,
please.
you were doing so well. You were doing so. This was such a beautiful day. Why did you have to do it? You're hanging out with a 45-year-old man. Why did you have to describe your, oh, you were doing so good, you know? Oh, you just had to that, that stick it in. Okay, okay, I can live with that.
I get I get more gray hairs by the day, dude. That's just the way
Oh,
things are.
trust me, it'll get worse. It'll get much, much worse.
I would like to say I appreciate everyone who came and attended and hung out with us, and for sharing some example code with us as well, Seven. It was awesome to have you guys here, and I hope that anybody who finds this later finds it to be a useful guide on tes3 command. If you feel like there are some missing resources, we do have some more in the chat now, and hopefully in the video description, where you can find some other authors talking about how to use this tool and examples of some of the different things that it can do that aren't shown here.
Yeah. And one final thing, Sector, just if you can hang out with me here for a second, is just next week. Reminder to everyone, it's gonna be a beautiful week. It's gonna be on Saturday. We're gonna have the mighty Sealoff, and I'll be honored to join him. We're talking about dungeons, and on Sunday we're gonna have a double treat of quests. It's gonna be Dene and Mort talking only about quests. And I just want to wrap it up, Sector, by saying, because on behalf of all the novices, Dene mentioned something in the chat while you were demonstrating something about how this event came to be. And I think it's just appropriate to share this, especially because this is going on the record. Uh, Being a new member of this community, one of the things that I was mostly shocked is one of the things that prevented me from coming in originally was this sort of miasma, this misconception that the Morrowind modding community was elitist, insulated, that the walls were really high and gatekeepers and toxic and whatever. And like I make this private joke with Dene, Your Honor, I present to you in the case of Sanity versus Stupidity Exhibit A, her Drax Custos. Because I'm a nobody, from poor country, and just hanging out with you guys. One day I was talking to Melchior Dark about the possibility of making maybe something, involving education and sharing information. And you know what he did? He picked up right there, talked to Danny, G7, Merlord, Lucy, a couple other people, and this event started. And it was born out of that conversation that I had with Melchior Dark. And it goes to show how far these people are willing to go for all of us. I have been on the backstage, kind of helping Dene do things, and the woman is amazing. She has a bunch of things going for her in her life, and she's managing the whole thing. And also you, Sector, and all of the other mentors. What you're doing for us, everybody's just donating their time. And for those of you that don't know, when Danny originally asked if anybody was willing to participate as mentors, the number of people that showed was so overwhelming that even if we do every single weekend until the year ends, we're not going to cover everybody that showed up. This is just how amazing it is. It is the radical opposite of a toxic community. I never felt more welcome because I'm not rich. I don't exude raw sexuality. Don't own a gaming company. I'm not Dene's husband or Melchior Dog's cousin, even though somebody asked me this once. And just by the virtue of bringing something, a concern to them, they responded like that. And people like Sector and everybody else just jumped in. So absolutely hats off to you all. Thank you so much. On behalf of all the novices out there, this is a beautiful, beautiful thing. Beautiful thing.
Yeah, I would very much like to echo the same sentiment. I've been a part of Morrowind community on the sidelines for at least a decade now. I've been playing Morrowind for probably too damn long, and I know a lot of the people in MMC that I interact with on a semi-regular basis, or maybe not from their mods, and I had a lot of preconceived notions about what interacting with a lot of these people might be like before I joined MMC. And I've been pleasantly surprised to find that everybody is very welcoming, easy to get along with. And even the people that I have had disagreements with about some things have been very nice to interact with, and we can all hang out and bullshit because, we all love more
Exactly.
together. That's what's.
Exactly. No, just you alone. I mean, when I first met you and what you did for me, and it shows here on this workshop. So yeah, thank you very much. And Dene, you are absolutely the matriarch, my friend. You are a beautiful, beautiful human being. All that you've been doing for us in this event, like we owe a lot to you, as we owe it to Dark Elf Guy and everybody else. And it's one thing that I say, Dene, one of the reasons why I think everybody behaves the way that it does, because there's a saying that you guys have in English that it actually translates really well in Portuguese, and it goes, attitude reflects leadership, Captain. So there you go. And I'll wrap up with that. Thank you, Brother Sector, once again. And I guess we'll see each other next week. Do you want to add anything else, Sector?
We might see each other for that team meeting. I'm not sure. But yeah, I appreciate everyone. Thank you all. Have a great afternoon and happy modding. Let me know if you have any questions about tes3, Command.
Happy modding, everyone. Everybody have a beautiful, beautiful week. Take care, all.